We are all set. It is the making of a marketer here on a Thursday. I see you laughing, Jess, on my technical difficulties to start the process today. So if someone caught like the first 3 seconds of the feed, they probably caught me like having to rewrite a description for our episode. But Jess, we're up and live, and this is this real time stuff, you know.
It was totally giving an Office Space moment there, and I was like, "What is he typing? Like, what is going on?"
No,
But
you
it
know
was
the
great.
funny thing, and you know, in our 4 years of doing this now, I've been told that my keyboard sounds like a like old school typewriter. It's kind of like noisy, and you've probably heard this on meetings too. So, like again, for those who are first listening to the podcast, Jess and I are on the same team at work at LinkedIn. Sometimes we have joint calls together. You hear me typing away. You probably hear these like loud sounds. I have a special carpal tunnel keyboard because I discovered in my late 20s that was the first thing that went downhill, Jess. You know, you always talk about you get in your 30s, your 40s, things go downhill. Starting carpal tunnel, and I started looking through all these keyboards, and this is early days of Instagram and whatnot. I looked at Instagram, I looked at Reddit, and I found carpal tunnel people talking about this special split keyboard. It makes all kinds of noise, but it's been magic for me, and not one other person can type on it because they're like, what the heck is this thing, Andy? It's like, it's my special keyboard.
Yeah, you're better off.
Yes. So that's our marketing lesson for the day. We do have some important marketing discussion for the afternoon, and this is a topic that I was really excited when it came across the table for a potential episode. It's going to be delving into the world of B2C, B2B. What should we be doing different? What's the same? How does this all work together? And no one better to break this down for us than Lauren Bello. She is the CEO of Ready Set Rocket, part of SIA Partners. And Lauren, I am really excited to pick on a few things here, and I'm just glad we got our tech right because the conversation is now rolling. Thank you for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
So, we're going to start you off with the question we've been asking to all of our guests in season 4. We're in an AI world, but how do you remain authentic in your day to day? So, between the chat GPTs, between us utilizing our AI video software, you know, I'm sure you're seeing it a lot at the agency level in terms of how we're trying to be more efficient. But are you still bringing your authentic self to the table? And what are the steps for others to follow?
Yeah. I love this question because I feel like, there's just so much, for lack of better words, bullshit out there. And, to me, I think AI is really the ultimate bullshit detector because I think a lot of people let down their guard when they use AI tools. And it's sort of like this looks like a LinkedIn post. This looks like an article, but there's not necessarily that extra effort to use discernment, to make sure it actually has a POV, to make sure you're actually like kind of putting the filters of why would anyone even care about this? And is it adding value, or am I just kind of talking into the void? So I think that kind of like overconfidence it breeds means that everybody is a little bit more on alert of whether AI wrote something. And I think everybody's held a little bit more accountable to bringing substance to the table. So that's really what I try to focus on, right? I think AI tool adoption is table stakes. There's a ton of VC money pouring into all these platforms, and everybody wants to sell you something and differentiate themselves because they're using AI. Some are ahead of the game, but like if you're not adopting the platforms, you're dead, especially in our industry. But for me, with my team, with clients, our biggest focus is just on what is innately human that makes us valuable in the context of AI tools. And AI tools are going to play a bigger and bigger role in what we do. And that's taste, that's judgment, that's trusting your gut, that's having a POV, that's being agile in the way that you're communicating, and in the ability to kind of pick up on what's happening in the world and how that should mean you pivot your strategy, right? So to me, it's like that's where the authenticity comes from, is making sure that you are kind of like pushing those skills among your team, teaching them how to think in that way. And I think that's why like junior talent are in kind of like the most challenging spot right now, right? Because they haven't gotten the reps and they didn't go through the process of creating all of these things that we needed to create, and, making the mistakes and getting the repetition to develop those guts. So I think especially for senior people and any kind of senior leader, that really needs to be the focus. And that's how you make sure your team shows up authentically. And that's how you make sure you're showing up authentically, is, just really making sure you're mindful of how you add value beyond the tools.
Lauren, it's really timely that you brought up the AI being like the ultimate BS tool. Our colleague who has a daughter in college was telling us this week on our team meeting that the professors are now putting all these tools in place. And I'm thinking, what are the tools to detect if they used AI to write their papers and theses, et cetera? So I just think that's funny that you bring it up, because it made me think, okay, so now how can I detect?
Right.
Like if it is coming from AI or if it's coming from a human.
Right. We do assessments when we hire people because we really like to see how they think, not just how they interview, especially since a lot of what they're doing, it's like hands-on work and, really bringing a unique POV or way to think about things. So, it's not anything super time consuming, but we used to send a brief and they would do it at home and they would come in and share it with us. And we found we have to do everything in the office because so many people were coming in and clearly using AI for everything. And the conversations were a waste of time because it was so clear so quickly that they didn't have strategic justification for it. They clearly hadn't been the one to develop the POV once you asked them how they got there. And it obviously weeded out some candidates, but also some people I think that could have done it themselves were sort of discounting the value of their POV and their experience. And all of a sudden, it's like you have this kind of like AI solution that there's no justification for,
I want to table that thought because I think there's going to be more of this discussion. We're going to weave in here a little bit, Lauren, because I hadn't thought of that before with candidates, because so many of them are taught use AI, like every job description right now, use AI, no AI, do all these AI tools. And they're probably like, yeah, I got to use AI for this. But it's like, do they have that discernment yet? And it gets into the reps you're talking about. That's right. I have to like think about this more, but I'm just thinking of like 21, 22-year-old Andy, what he would be doing, probably be so freaking confused what to do. And like, I think that's where a lot of our youngins are at right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to like jump into your experience now, Lauren. We read a little bit of your bio, fourth member of Ready, Set, Rocket, now to CEO, this great growth that you've shown there. And for, myself and then a lot of others I've worked with in the agency space, I would say your growth is what we thought is the dream one day. Like there's, when I was in agency space, there wasn't probably no less than like 500 different times I'd be like, what if I ran one of these places one day? So I'm like really curious to hear about your growth through Ready, Set, Rocket, the position you're at now and how all this has come about for you.
Yeah. You know what? When I think back to the beginning, I think what was different from day one was I was just like genuinely really excited to be there. It felt like I was a part of something special from the beginning. And I attribute that to the two founders who, kind of left the business 6 years ago now. But they were so passionate about what they did. And they were so kind of ahead of where I think especially the digital space was at the time when I joined in 2012, where everything was about like really digging deep and understanding the business. And then really digging deep into data and making sure data informed everything. And I just feel like from the second I started there, I learned every single day that I walked in. But the culture was really built around no ego, right? Like the founders were in the work and, we were all like just in the trenches trying to figure things out and trying to approach things in a new way and trying to help clients to figure things out, because this is when like people were throwing sites up that couldn't even be crawled because they looked cool and spending $2 million on them. And we were kind of coming in as a contrarian being like, why are you doing this? Is there any actual value to your business? Let's help to figure out what things like KPIs and accountability should look like. And we should still be developing beautiful creative. We should still be doing push the envelope, work across new platforms, but let's make sure we're doing it in a really strategic way. And I think that just constant stress testing around business strategy, stress testing around like, why are you doing this and what impact is it going to make on the business and what, action are we trying to drive amongst a person? That is what the whole culture was built off of. And I think I personally really thrived in that environment because as we started to scale, that sort of like focus on what's right for the business, our business and our clients' businesses, made it so there were no politics. Nobody was trying to like have a turf war or, offended if you stepped into the territory that wasn't necessarily in your job description. And I've always just been a person that can kind of like assess a situation and kind of see opportunity clearly and know how to kind of tackle it, or see problems and know how to fix them. And I think in this environment where, the founders, Aaron and Alex, were really supportive of, if you see a problem and you think you can fix it, go ahead and do it, or pursue the things you're excited about. Just very organically, my remit kind of expanded. Like I remember when I became partner, I was like, it feels weird that we're spending time 2 weeks into the following month figuring out whether we did well financially last month. It feels like we need a better way to track our revenue and our accruals, and that needs to tie to our project management system. Nerdy example, but I think, it completely transformed our business.
You're warming my heart right now. Like project management over the last month, this will derail us completely. There's certain things Jess and I are working on right now, and I've been like, stop. We got to have a project management system. I was like, we can't launch these things unless there's a system involved to like make it work. So I just have to add that warmed my heart.
Oh, I'm so happy. My very nerdy comment warmed your heart. But I guess the point was like, it was outside of my remit. I was focused on accounts initially, and then, as I got kind of those systems in place, which made my life easier running accounts and allowed us to run things more efficiently and then invest in our relationships and in the work to continue growing things. Then it was just slowly kind of like seeing opportunities and taking on more and more. So I think the really cool part about it wasn't a power grab. It wasn't, trying to take anything away from someone else or some kind of like grand ambition. It was like I was genuinely invested in the business and the mission of the business. I felt like I could shape the culture from very early on. I felt like my fingerprints were on the work. My fingerprints were on the relationships. My fingerprints were on the team experience. And over time, it just felt like a really natural progression. And eventually, I went from president to CEO, and then, led the sale and acquisition of Ready Set Rocket to SIA. And now I'm leading SIA. I'm leading Ready Set Rocket within SIA, definitely not leading SIA. They're a 3,000 person global consulting firm. But yeah, I think when you're naturally curious and you genuinely give a shit, for lack of better words, it's easy to stand out. And I was really lucky to be somewhere that embraced that.
Yeah, I love this. There's so many things. One, I want to know your take on the ego piece, because I think that is so important, especially now. So do you think maybe AI is actually helping people drop the ego just because there's now such a push to show, oh, this is real, it's coming from a real person, I can be vulnerable, I can show that I don't know everything. So I want your take on that. And then I want your take on, I love that the founders gave you that agency to take on problems and solutions. So how do you now carry that forward with the people that you lead and managing this like teeter-totter where they maybe they want to be told exactly what to do because that gives them confidence, but then also pushing them to grow and step forward?
My brain just went straight to your second question. So can you repeat your first question?
I know. It was like, because there was so much and I didn't want to forget. But the first one was the ego piece.
Yeah.
So ego and the teeter-totter.
I think I have a counter opinion on the ego piece tied to AI. I think one of the biggest things I try to focus on is making sure that I'm doing everything I can to make people as confident as I possibly can, and not falsely confident, right? Like it needs to be built around credibility and like truly having an expertise. But I think ego, and when people behave with ego, a lot of times it comes from a place of insecurity. And I think something that I'm seeing more often is that people almost like get so uncomfortable with the idea of AI or where their jobs are going because of AI that they almost feel like they have to like overcompensate or, claim that they have expertise that they don't, or be really like counter to the innovation that's going to happen no matter what, and try to like dig into why they should keep doing things the way that they've always been doing them. And I guess that's where I'm seeing more of the ego type of behavior, that it's more about like I need to validate the way I've always done things because that's my safe space. So to me, I almost feel like this has added even more insecurity, and like the people that are prone more to ego lean into it more. And then the people that don't are sort of just doing their thing. It's like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to learn about this and I'm going to figure it out. And I think, at least for me, that's what I look for every time we hire someone. That's what I look for in the people that I elevate. It's just the people who see challenges and ambiguity and, just, I don't know, change as opportunity, not as a threat.
So let's like weave into some of the what I would call changes that I've had over the course of my career and opportunities that I've had over the course of my career of the meat and potatoes today, which we're talking a little bit about your POV, Lauren, on the B2B versus B2C, and there's that B2CB, like weird stuff that all exists. Like, what's happened since 2012, Lauren? Because you talked about this golden age of digital, where we all threw darts at the wall and had no idea what we were doing. We were telling stories, we were doing marketing. And I feel like one day I woke up and everything was segmented and everyone got kind of weird that you did this vertical or I did that vertical. And, I see it more often than anything in the B2B versus B2C. And I think Jess and I have talked a lot to like some of our larger B2B customers are looking for inspiration. We provide it, but then they're like, it isn't like that right cut, or it isn't that right audience, or it doesn't speak to our audience because our audience is boring, or there's always these things. So I want your POV is how have we got here in this like B2C versus B2B kind of weird thing, and how are you tackling that right now when you go to bat for your different customers?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've always thought about it, I guess, if we use like PR best practices as almost like getting ahead of the story. Like, to me, I truly believe and have always believed that B2B, B2C are marketing to human beings, right? And I think B2B in many cases, there's this like taking ourselves so seriously that it's like, no one could possibly understand my business if they've never worked in it. So I'm going to work with partners who have only worked in my business. And as a part of that, we're going to keep doing the same things we've always done. And I think when we're pitching RSR in B2B, I don't try to make us sound like we are only focused on B2B. I own from the beginning, hey, we are industry agnostic. We are, kind of B2B, B2C agnostic. Like, at the end of the day, we understand people and their behaviors and what drives them and what gets them to act. And understanding all different verticals and all different industries means that we have our ear to the street as far as trends that are happening across different parts of people's lives, the things that they're exposed to on the same platforms that you're going to be exposing your brand to them, regardless of whether they're in work mindset or if they're in mom mindset or patient mindset or whatever kind of moment you're trying to reach them in. So, I think at the end of the day, what I like to do is try to change the perspective of the conversation up front of, do you really want to just be looking at your neighbors and choose between 4 model houses? Or do you want to be looking at inspiration and figure out a brand new way to be looking at how your brand can show up and how you can stand out from your competitors? Because I think that's really a race to the bottom, right? When you're just doing what everyone else in your industry is doing. And at least for us, that's been really impactful. There's been times where we've won. I remember we were pitching Deutsche Bank back in the day, and we ended up winning because of a case study I shared from Ann Taylor, where we had done like a really good job driving incremental, basically revenue and visits to their site related to a Pinterest and SEO strategy. And it was related to kind of like transitioning to a millennial focused strategy for them. And they were like, oh, millennials, we're trying to find a millennial investors. And we're like, wow, that's interesting. So I think it's just finding like the inroads and the connecting points to get them to think about it from a bigger perspective versus kind of thinking about, how do I get a partner who understands regulatory compliance in this area, or understands the things that the reality is any good team can learn within a few weeks and is really not going to impact the quality of the work in the long term.
Okay, I'm coming at you with all the AI questions today. I don't know, it's top of mind.
AI it up.
Oh boy, yes. Okay, Lauren, do you think there is, or it's easier now to find more of that connection between B2B and B2C just based on our behavioral shifts with how we use AI to make decisions across the board?
I don't know if it's necessarily easier. I think just the AI behavior backs up what we've always said, right? Like if you're in front of your computer Googling or reading an article, like I'm reading articles about whatever AI and automation, or reading an article in Adweek, but I'm getting chased by an ad from whatever brand I just bought my kids gummies from, and it's like, okay, like all of these things exist in the same universe, so I just feel like at the end of the day, we're going to keep being on new technologies. We're going to keep evolving how we find brands, how we engage with brands. If anything, the amount of time we spend, especially on digital platforms, social platforms, consuming content online, that just makes it converge things more and more. And then add in AI, and God knows where they're going to go with those platforms in terms of, ad models and search models and all of that from a paid perspective. I mean, I think it's just getting, to your point, deeper and deeper, but I think it just justifies the perspective that we've all always had, that this isn't B2B marketing of 20 years ago where it was like, okay, we'll sponsor a golf tournament and we'll, show up in the trades. Like that's not how people make decisions. They're seeing your brand in the context of a lot of platforms where they're also seeing some of the most well-known, beautifully designed, best storytelling you can see on the consumer brand side. So, you just can't show up in the way that you used to. And if you're not thinking about at least knowing that you're showing up in the context of those things while making sure you're showing up in a credible way from the standpoint of, whatever your business offers, and, making sure you're seen as credible in the context of your offering, then I think you're just going to miss a lot of opportunities. And especially with the banner blindness and the rolled eyes you get from so many ads in feed and in platform, you're working with a much more discerning audience than you were working with before as well. So I think especially with the need to get very tailored information very quickly, the ability to kind of get to the crux of the matter in terms of researching things and things like that on LLMs, and as search evolves, and what's going to happen to Google's platform in the long term in terms of that even evolving into likely more of a large language model AI result set. I think that's where we can't rely on bottom funnel tactics like brand building and making sure we're kind of going over the top and establishing ourselves before people are researching is going to become more and more important.
I mean, that's something that I've been a little bit excited about selfishly, Lauren, is that I feel like we got into the world where everything became paid, website clicks, website conversions, very instant. So like I always give the example, when I've done paid media in my career, I can get someone to rage purchase a $25 t-shirt off of Facebook. It's possible. Like I can make an ad that can bring that to the table. It's a little trickier to do that to actually build the brand, though. Like these short form wins or these like nice cost per clicks, they're good in the short form, but it's harder to build the brand. I'm selfishly excited that this new LLM world has made it so you actually are going to have a lot of trouble depending on anything that's website clicks long term. You're going to have to think a lot broader than that. Even examples I have right now, when I see different ads for different products, we just got a pool built in our backyard. We're adding some stuff. We're figuring out how to like life with this thing. But when there's a product ad that shows up about the pool, I'm not even clicking the ad. I'm actually going to the LLM and I'm asking ChatGPT about the product. The reason why, Lauren, is I can have that done in 30 seconds versus some of these websites, even if I click that link, I don't know what the heck I'm reading because it's just a bunch of numbers and stuff all over the place. So I really like the speed element you're talking about, but also I think we're getting back to 2012 brand. And I selfishly am really excited about that because those are the people and brands I think are going to shine in this new world if they can get back to throwing darts, but being data informed when they throw those darts.
Totally. And I would say I would majorly yes and what you just said, because I think there's sort of the people are going to research differently, and now all of a sudden you have an aggregated point of truth that scans all of the internet to tell you about that company, and you're not reliant on just what the company says about themselves, which especially with how D2C brands have gotten a lot bigger and there's a lot of kind of scam or quality issues with some of the things that you're being delivered ads on. That's a huge consideration now, right? But on the other side, I think the advent of social and the kind of fragmentation of how brands can come to market and the discovery aspect of how you can discover new brands through channels and just, spending so much more time online and they know so much about you. I think it's a really interesting dynamic to remember that, yes, people are going to research, but I think there's a lot of people who are like, websites won't exist. And, people are just going to be making decisions on LLMs, and like, who knows how the LLMs are going to evolve. But at the end of the day, just like there's still currency to find the band nobody knows about, like there's still currency around finding the brands nobody knows about and finding, the products that other people don't have yet and telling your friends about it and being the first to have it. So I think brand exploration to that point will still be extremely important, but it's not going to be in context of selling a dress or selling a product. It's going to be building that brand, building what it stands for, making it something that, people want to explore and want to be kind of advocating for to others because it says something about them, beyond just wearing it or whatever. And I think that's like, to your point, there's like a major pressure that happens when it's so easy to get to the bottom of an answer to something, but there's not necessarily a right or wrong answer, right? Sometimes you just want something to take you into a curated kind of exploratory path. And I think that I don't know, kind of rabbit holing that can happen sometimes when you're looking for something or looking to explore new brands. I think I'm very interested to see how the LLMs evolve to that, but also how brands realize that there needs to be an investment made to make sure that you're kind of in the consideration set when people are in that exploratory moment,
It's like, it makes me think of the doom scrolling is now almost shifted to the LLM space where, you can, another question populates. I can go deeper. I can go deeper in this exploratory phase. And it is fun and how quick it produces the results.
Yeah. And I remember this is ages ago, and I'm going to lead this into kind of our agency discussion, Lauren. I remember distinctly it was one of the agencies I worked for, MD, who we had on the show, Jess. He met one of my former bosses. We used to talk about Musical.ly all the time, and it didn't go anywhere. It's the original platform that turned later into TikTok. And I remember when it turned into TikTok one day, I was like, what is this? Like, my app changed, like, what is this TikTok thing? And I saw that feed for the first time, and I dropped my phone, and I went into my now new boss's office. I said, this is the future of the internet. I was like, there is nothing that can compete with this inventory and how fast people are going to see content. And that's what it is now. Now we elevate to LLMs. There's a lot of different things, but inventory, things on our screen, things changing. One thing that doesn't change to me, though, Lauren, is I like that you're developing an agency that is vertical agnostic, because for my personal opinion, that saves us from any upswings, downturns. Like, it keeps us leveled in the agency world. But I'm curious your thoughts, because you started to talk about this a little bit as you bring team members on and you're seeking kind of where they could go with this. We see a lot of vertical specialization right now. Like, there are a lot of companies that they value that significantly. And I used to say back in our day, I learned how to be HIPAA compliant the first time I got a healthcare client, which better or worse may not be a good thing. But either way, like, I'm curious how you feel about that, bringing people on, having them learn different verticals, and what that looks like for what you're doing right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think from the start, a core principle of RSR has been being vertical agnostic and really making sure that we're bringing in, I don't want to say T-shaped people, but that, the kind of value you bring as a full service partner is that you kind of understand all of the elements of how a marketing program or a creative campaign or whatever, how that comes to life, and that we can support the whole customer journey through the standpoint of maximizing our ability to drive action, whether that be purchasing something, thinking something, performing a behavior, right? So I think when I think about vertical specialization, that's just never been a focus of ours and what we were looking for. We want people that aren't just like, this is how things are supposed to be done and I'm on an assembly line. We want people to be really mindful of, okay, we're trying to get someone to do something. Here's the parameters with the client. Here's where the client's trying to take their business, and how do I make sure I have like, the kind of, I guess, zoomed out perspective of what is the best way to do things right now based on how the world has shifted, based on how consumer behavior has shifted, based on how technology is shifting. And at least from my standpoint, I think people who have diverse experience and have that kind of pattern recognition, but also have the reps to understand that, one way doesn't work for everything. I think that's where new ideas come from. And I think that's where innate collaboration comes from. And I even think about the other side of things is we try to focus on making sure that our teams are truly working together at all times. So when we say we're integrated, it's not just we have all these, we don't have all of these, we don't just have all these capabilities, design, copy, CRM, creative strategy, social media, whatever. It's that the design team is learning over time what the channel level best practices are from the standpoint of, the different segments that we're targeting and, what those relationships look like and how they differ in terms of what conversion looks like and what LTV looks like and, what their mindset is on the other side of the screen, but also what are the nuances that drive performance. So they're learning about paid media and they're learning about, evolving how they're designing based on that. It doesn't mean they're ever going to go in platform and they're not going super deep on that, but there are innate considerations that they have that someone working on design in a silo and throwing it over the wall to another team in another agency wouldn't have. And that's something that we really incentivize, but it's also, I think about it as the best way for us to make them dangerous, right? Being diverse in your own craft is really important, and being able to work on different types of things or different types of clients, but also understanding the broader marketing ecosystem and how those different considerations and variables should inform the best output of what you're doing. I think in the context of agency life or working in any marketing organization, I think that's how we really future-proof the team.
I love it. Totally agree. I mean, you're pitching the generalist model here. I go back and forth because I really do think with the environment that we're living in, it's trying to push us into that specialist box. Like, find that niche, go deeper and deeper. But there's something to be said with the generalist mindset, and like going back to what you were saying about like, do you want a model home or do you want that breakthrough thinking that is really going to meet the person that you're trying to reach, meet their needs like in a deep way.
Right. And I think that goes back to the agility of thinking, right? Because how many times have you had a strategy and you're rolling it out, but the reality is it can become very quickly like a speeding train. Like it just continues because that was the plan, versus someone taking a step back and being like, does this even make sense anymore because X changed or Y changed or this happened in the markets or this platform launched this thing, So I think making sure that you have the types of thinkers who have the pattern recognition for how different kind of variables impact the work and should impact rethinking things, and are excited to do those things versus annoyed because, well, this was our strategy and this was our project plan. I think that's where the client gets better work and better impact, but also that's where the team gets smarter and smarter,
Lauren, you've hit on a few of these principles already. I wanted to pivot now towards your leadership style. So you obviously told your story at the beginning, working through the ranks, becoming the CEO. How does some of what your passions were maybe at that point up till now, like where do they kind of intersect? Like where does this kind of influence how you lead? And more specifically, Jess is someone who speaks to a lot of executives in her time at the Stanford D School. So we talk a lot about what Jess's learnings has been working with different CEOs, working with different C-levels. And what comes up a lot is they have these things they're passionate about, but then they got to this role and they can't do any of it anymore. It's all business now. They lose that angle. How do you keep this creative energy you're expressing today and then bring that to your team as a leader?
Yeah. I think what I think about all the time is like, I want to be the boss that I wanted. And I think I had experiences with very good bosses when I joined RSR and was working with Aaron and Alex, the two founders. Not that we have, our styles are very different and our background are different, but I think no matter what, there were things that they did that I really wanted to carry through when I took over RSR and have carried through and scaled since we've grown a lot in the last few years. But I think at the end of the day, it goes back to that ego point. Like I didn't go to a fancy school. I moved to New York and, you know, was working 3 jobs to pay my rent for the first couple years of my career. Started RSR as an account manager and worked my way up from the bottom, you know. So I think it's very easy to have empathy for what other people are dealing with and going through and what it's like to be in their shoes when you've been in all of those shoes. But I also think my experience coming up and really like climbing my way to the top without any kind of like shortcuts or, you know, jumping from jobs to get to the next place to get that next level. I think there's an inherent amount of respect you get from people from that. And I think that mutual respect really goes a long way where like I try to always like assume good intentions with the team and with anybody. Try to take a moment to make sure people understand how and why we do things the way that we're doing them, or how and why maybe what they're doing isn't the right thing to do in the moment and what they can do next. And I think just like taking time with people to help to teach them and orient around things, which is something I was so lucky to have because we were so small, you know, 10, 12, 13 years ago. That's something that's like a principle that I take really seriously. You know, every single person that joins the team, I make sure we do a lunch or a coffee at least to start when they start and I get to know them. You know, I sit out with the team in the office purposely. I did not want an office because I like to be out and around the team and a part of the energy and a part of the collaborative creative energy. So I don't know, for me, it's like, you have to be a part of the culture and you have to set the standard. And, you know, I think just not taking yourself too seriously and making sure that you're kind of setting a standard for excellence in the work, but matching that with the idea that like, we're all people and, you know, you need to treat people like people and respect people if you want respect back. I think the reality is I say to the team all the time, if you're helping us to grow, you're going to grow here. And I think that is like the best way to kind of set the standard for making people feel like they're getting something out of the relationship, not just you, right?
Celebrating you, Lauren, and this mindset, because like your work ethic, I think is a superpower right now in this environment, in this climate. It makes you so relatable. Like the way that you like came in, having the 3 jobs, working, like trying different things, like always having that curious mindset and then continuing to ask like, why are we doing this? Like, how are we going to get from A to Z? I think it's so spot on. And I'm seeing that come out more and more with the executives that are really standing out. They're sharing more of that work ethic and these relatable stories.
Yeah. I mean, no one wants to feel like a hack, right? And when you're asking people to do things that you've done or you know you would do, you feel a lot better about it, right?
So 2 questions here. We're going to round us out for the interview. I want to get into a little bit of personal branding here, Lauren, because you've showed a lot of it today. Just what Jess said. Excellent story that you bring to the table and you bring to your peers. But I do think you as a brand, Lauren, as I hear you talk today, I feel like a very powerful, I would want to work with that agency. She is going to be involved and ensure her staff is involved in bringing, you know, up-to-date content, up-to-date strategies, up-to-date with what is happening in the world. And the other thing too is, Lauren, I've worked with so many agency owners, some retired, some currently still doing it, and burnout is like really consistent with a lot of them. And I want them to hear your spirit right now. So if I were your brand coach, not that I do this, but if I were your brand coach, I'd be like, we got to get Lauren out there and doing some of this, because I think you would uplift both business and you could definitely uplift just the network of people in similar positions to you and how they can get the most out of their agencies. So curious your thoughts, just like personal brand yourself, like how do you feel about that right now? Because I feel like there's a good spark there with what you're bringing to the table.
Oh gosh, this is a very interesting question because I know I shouldn't say this when, you know, we're on this podcast to basically talk about brand and personal brand, but I mean, innately, I am a person who, if I'm in front of a camera, I'm like panicking because I don't know what to do with my hands. Like I have just never, self-promotion has just never been something that's come naturally to me. I live and breathe like trying to bring my most authentic self at all times. And I just think no matter what anyone says, this like influencer creative culture is very challenging to kind of balance both of those things. So I think as a marketer, if I thought about my personal brand, I would say it's more like grassroots. I think I've built my personal brand around, long lasting relationships, both with employees that stay at our company for 8, 9, 10 years, to just long lasting relationships in the industry, whether that be with other executives or other clients. And when it comes to, I guess, thought leadership and, speaking and where I'm putting my voice out there, I just think about what it's like for any of us scrolling through LinkedIn, where there's so many people that are just like talking for the sake of talking. And then you see the glimmers of real insight or real perspective, and you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. So I think that's just what I try to hold myself accountable to, is like, add to the conversation if you're really passionate about it, or if you have something valuable to add to it, a unique insight, a counterpoint of view, a new idea. And then in general, just like letting the work and the substance speak for itself. I think that probably just reiterates the sort of being kind of unapologetically yourself. I've just always been uncomfortable walking in and talking about something I'm not an expert in. Let the experts talk about the things they're experts in. I know I'm good at X, Y, and Z. I know I can talk about X, Y, and Z until I turn blue in the face, So that's probably not the answer I should give, because I don't have a...
It's the real answer, and that's really right.
That's kind of where I've come from, as I've kind of, my profile has built a bit, and as my purview in terms of leadership has grown.
So you're saying that we're not going to see any thought leadership from you, lo-fi dancing on LinkedIn, or maybe eating some food, doing a review?
Yeah. Usually if you catch me in photos on LinkedIn, it's because I didn't know someone had a camera, or I didn't know it was going to be posted on LinkedIn.
Now that's a special genre of thought leadership right now with the food eating. So that one hasn't been mastered yet completely on LinkedIn, but we've seen a few people try it. So it's out there. I will close us, Lauren. This is my bonus 60-second question answer for you. So we talked a lot about past today and kind of like where we've come from, the old agency days, the modern LLMs. In the beginning of 2026, I'm not sure if you followed the trend, but 2016 was very popular across all feeds and brands were all hopping on it. 2016 or around that range, if you could bring something back from that time frame to today's marketing world, what would you bring back and why?
From that time frame to today's marketing world, honestly, okay, this is going to be a weird answer, but 2016 and generally pre-pandemic, I just feel like there was real office culture. And I'm not by any means the person who's like, everybody come back 5 days a week. Like, I think flexibility is absolutely important. Mm-hmm. But RSR used to have theme Fridays, and it wasn't like a corporate mandated thing. We were like 25 people at the time. The team had put it together, but like the themes were like Victorian funeral and Steve Jobs summer outfits, like just weird themes that the teams would come up with. And like the outfits were insane. But just the camaraderie and the natural creativity that were created with that, just, I think, created a level of collaboration and creativity that really extended into the work. And I just think that kind of like authentic team in-person culture just was really hard to replicate post-pandemic when everybody came back. Now, I'm by no means saying we should be going back to how things were in 2016, where everybody's just going into the office 5 days a week. I don't believe in that. But I do miss things like that just felt like so organic, and the team was so excited about them, and it just felt like such a physical manifestation of our culture and of our values,
We used to have an Olympics at one of my agencies. There was a lot of quirky stuff. Now, I remember those kind of things well. I know exactly what you're talking about. There's a different tone to it these days. I don't even know how to describe it. I just say it's a different tone. Like the in-office stuff isn't like at the same level that it was back then.
Yeah, I think it's still a moment of trying to figure out the choreography, and it feels kind of orchestrated right now, right? It's like it kind of feels back to the early tech days when it was like, well, we have breakfast and lunch and we have a beer tap and a bar cart and whatever, and it's like, that is kind of hard to have as a pitch now that everybody worked
has it
for years, and right, everyone has it now.
I was just going to quickly say, I remember I started watching Game of Thrones just so I could take part in our little pod. Yeah, like our 8-person pod discussion on Monday afternoons.
And I had to watch it. We were the same because we had a fantasy Game of Thrones league. And it's like, if I didn't watch it, I wouldn't make it to lunchtime before somebody spoiled something. So, no, I remember that very, very well.
But Lauren, I'm loving the outfit idea. I think we can bring this back.
Bring it back.
Yes. But Lauren, it was wonderful having you on today. Please give Lauren a follow on LinkedIn, see what she's putting out there. And if you're in the business of looking for an agency, of course, Ready, Set, Rocket. Lauren, it was a wonderful time having you today. Many learnings, and we look forward to seeing your work here in the future.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Lauren. Bye. That was a great way to end it right there. I hadn't thought about the workplace culture thing. Like, I gotta do some just thinking on this one, because it actually hits on an interesting point. There was a certain type of culture in the 2010s that I feel like, I don't know if it was great for everyone. Like, I can't speak for everyone, but there was something about 2015 to 2019 that had some just different vibe to it. I don't know what it is. It's like we kind of started to figure ourselves out as a digital marketing world, and then when so much change, it's like we lost a lot of these things she was talking about.
Yeah, because it's different behaviors now. It had different life. And now when we go into the office, it's like we're only going in for a limited time, and it's again we're going to that specialist piece, or we're trying to compartmentalize everything. So it's like, okay, so now we're gonna go in for a few days a week. We've got this is our special time to connect in person again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's like everyone's trying to. You're right. Everyone's trying to specialize in what's cool for that time frame. To be honest, Jess, is it fair of me to call out how many people are calling themselves AI specialists now? And I was I know some of these people, and I don't want to be mean, but I'm I know your background, and you're very generalist like me. And it's in 3 months, you're telling me you've become an AI specialist. And it's people trying to force this, and it's just, it is okay to not be an AI specialist, but be a generalist or high-level marketer who knows AI. And that's what I personally want to be. And maybe there's some people out there that want to be specialists in different things, and that's completely different. But it just doesn't feel authentic. And I feel like that's what Lauren was hitting on a lot today with the way she leads.
Wasn't it Steve Jobs that said, or Warren Buffett, oh man, I need the fact check here, Andy, that said that you're a specialist, or you are an expert when you put 10,000 hours into
specialist.
My producer here, Andy, or our producer, yes,
is
yeah,
looking at
you're an expert when there's 10,000 hours put into the subject.
Malcolm Gladwell.
Okay, wow, so off there.
Well, somebody might have, they could have cited a certain book and then made it more popular. Because, sometimes the larger CEOs will cite something they read in a book, and then it pops after that.
So if you put the 10,000 hours in, then yes, I believe that you are an expert.
Specialist. Yeah, and that's the thing, it's kind of figuring out what that is. And I think that Lauren does a good job of going to her past and bringing that into her future. There could be a lot of other C-levels that are trying to do this. And I think you have a closer link to that than I do, Jess, and the ones you talk to. But I feel like we hear some of these similar things she's talking about. They almost they want to do some of the stuff she's talking about. They almost feel like they don't have permission because they're lost in numbers and return on investments. And are we learning AI at a high enough level? Are we making this margin that we're supposed to be making that has changed on us overnight. Like I just think that they lose some of that, and I don't know what the right answer is, but what is that balance is probably important for them to find.
Well, what Lauren was saying about the ego piece, that is really huge, especially at the D School. We go into every program where title is not a focus. So it's like you remove that from the room immediately. Like this is your opportunity and space to explore. And it's always a good sign if the executive shows up and is genuinely curious, or they know that they need to break a pattern or learn something differently, then we're heading on the right track.
Yeah. And to what you always say, Lauren said it, I didn't really stop too much because we were on good conversation, but we're all human. And even the CEOs, you say it all the time. We treat the CEOs sometimes in the world of marketing, or the CMOs, like they're AI. And like, I think they know that. Like, I think it's easy for them. They're very smart people. It's how they got to these roles. They can read when you're not treating them the same as you would talk to like the director of marketing. And I think they want that open conversation.
Relatable and approachable. And that's why I hope I didn't embarrass her too much by just like giving her props and credit. But I am seeing this now on that executive level, and it's like standing out in this environment. We talked about as a team, NVIDIA, that CEO, and like how he can go from producing fully AI generated keynote to on his LinkedIn profile, putting right under his CEO experience that he was a dishwasher at Denny's. I mean, it's incredible. Like that, and even our own CEO at LinkedIn, something that I truly respect is how when he was moving through LinkedIn, he was head of sales at one point, or head of a sales team, and he could have continued that progression, but instead he went back to just a product manager and joined another team to get that perspective and to round out his experience. And I mean, and then he grew from there. But that like those types of stories and signals, and what Lauren was saying as well, like truly remarkable. And I think that is how people are standing out in this environment.
They need to see that too. You know, like I think the other people that are following them, they need to see that. People that work for them, they need to see that, because it is easy for people to miss this unless you're a little loud about it. And like loud as in being part of the community. Like, I mean, loud is making videos on LinkedIn and just like trying to get out there. That's kind of, hopefully we gave Lauren some excellent inspiration, but I feel like if I put her out there into like a CEO forum right now, and she's going to be like on the younger end of the spectrum of CEOs, there's a lot that some of these that have been doing this thing for 22 years at that level could learn from her. It's like it brings kind of some life back, but they hear it from someone that's kind of in their perspective. So that's kind of, I just feel like she has good power in her voice, and hopefully this podcast can propel that, because even for us, like, I think it's cool to have, you know, CEOs come on this show, you know, because there could be some that's like, why would I do a podcast? It's too risky. What are they going to ask me? All these things. You know, she was up for the task, and I think delivered one of our best episodes of the season thus far.
Totally. And we can always push harder, Andy.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I have the broadcast background to push some crazy questions out there, but, you know, we try. That is for, and this is still, I think, just, we were talking about this not too long ago, the after hours, the making of a marketer. Like, I feel like there has to be, I feel like it has to happen one day. We just got to coordinate, you know, like what our days look like, you know, make sure kids are asleep, like something like that. We got to bring on the right guest, and like after hours, what that could look like, because I think it becomes more unhinged at 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah. Yes. I was going to say unhinged or just exhausted.
Yeah, either or. Yeah, I know. Well, it depends where your brain's at. Who was it? It was we had our guest season 2, I think it was, or season 3, it was when we had Clark Barron on. He like brought it the hardest of any guests we ever had. He would be perfect for that episode. And it's basically like, it was like, what was wrong with all the CMOs in the world? That's the 10 o'clock at night episode right there.
You and I are so on the same page there. That's exactly what I was just thinking in my head. I was like, okay, we've only had one guest thus far that I could see being in this after hours, and it was Barron.
I think the Fire Festival stories too that we entered. Like, I think that you take that to more of a prime time, you know, outside of work hours episode, I think we would have gotten crazier on that one.
Yep. Well, there's always another opportunity for that.
There's always chances. It's one email away, and I think that's a story to like a lot of what we've learned today. But no, we're at time today, Jess. Another wonderful episode. We will continue on the momentum throughout the month, but thank you, everyone, and please give Lauren a follow, because if there's anyone I want to like give a prop up to like do some thought leadership, it's definitely Lauren. So Lauren Bello on LinkedIn, give her a follow, some likes, some clicks, all the good things. Until next time, Jess, see everyone later.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.